What's going on, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of my Generation Zero Let's Play. So at the start of these episodes, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of talk about the loadout that I'm picking for each episode, because I'm going to try to vary up my loadout as much as I possibly can. So for this episode, I'm going for a kind of bunker buster loadout, utilizing the semi-automatic shotgun, the AI-76, and the Mauser, all in the 5 crown. So, with the loadout kind of out of the way, we'll talk about it a bit more as the episode goes on here, but let's get started with the episode proper. So for today's episode, I have some pretty lofty goals. Basically, I am hoping to go through and clear out all of the remaining bunkers in the map in just one sitting here. So first things first, I needed to get a little bit of experience along the way just to make sure that I was leveled enough to actually go through all of these bunkers. So I went around the kind of archipelago region and just cleared out a bunch of these really easy to complete missions, so the Hunter and Ibaholman Church and stuff. And along the way, I managed to pick up 2 skill points, so we're continuing with that kind of engineer approach, and we're going to pick up salvage first here. And then after that, we're actually going to go for our stamina recharge, because the next skill that I'm going to be going for is going to be the health amount, so that way I can kind of improve my survivability along the way here. So now we hopped on over to Ibaholman Church just to wrap up this mission really quick and easy, and also get ourselves in a kind of decent fight over here at the church itself. So I've still got to play it relatively safe here in the kind of early game portion, because my character might as well be made out of paper mache against the machine's guns here. So I'm going to be using a lot of kind of guerrilla strategies to be making my way through the map here, utilizing my environment and various forests and stuff like that to have as much cover as I can along the way here, just so that hopefully we can keep up that deathless streak we've got going so far. Now, after taking down the Hunter, there were a couple mission objectives to pick up for first contact over here. So I just came on through, picked up the little radio broadcast and the notes that were left behind, so that way we could get that sweet 1250 experience points. Now, I gotta say, it's really cool. Nowadays, it seems like the experience kind of scales with how many missions you've completed. I'm obviously going to have to complete more missions to see if that's entirely true, but it's really good, because back in the early days of Generation Zero, all you got was a stock 1,000 experience per mission, and so this is going to really improve the grind along the way for all the levels we're going to need. Now, the radio message that we picked up from first contact actually brought us down to the mission, the Beachhead, and that was another really easy mission to just go through and complete and pick up a bit of experience along the way. And so now we're coming on over to Saltoman Naval Base, and this is going to be our first encounter with a military hunter. So I decided to play it pretty safe here and just toss out a flare to get him distracted so that I could do some pretty decent damage to him, or at least as much as I could here. Trying to use the runner's explosion there to do a little bit more damage in the process, and then aiming for the machine gun so that way I was again doing that direct damage. With all the machines in the area taken care of, now we're going to try to establish some contact with the outside world, which we're going to realize is easier said than done.
Det här är major Boman vid Västland. Har en spaningsplaton skickats till masten på norra Saltholmen. Vi behöver veta vad som ligger bakom de här störningarna omgående och huruvida det är förberedelse inför ett angrepp. Vår framgång bygger på er framgång. Jag behöver nog inte understryka detta kort.
The message we come across at the Saltoman Naval Bunker is actually really interesting. It's our first contact with a Russian contact that will be a major player in the game later on as we get further into the story here. But keeping in mind Sergei for later on is going to be really important. And then also on top of that, we hear from a major bowman. And I wonder if some of these named soldiers will be NPCs that will potentially come across later on in the game through various DLC and updates. I think it would be really cool for us to come across like a surviving military partition that had managed to endure the entire machine onslaught while killing all the machines. They would probably be some of the more capable folks that we'd come across throughout the story here, at least in comparison to the Iron Church, the Liuset Commune, and the Resistance. I think that it would be super awesome to see a surviving military group just kind of to expand the world. And also, I feel like a military group would potentially have a lot of insight to various factors of lore in this game as well.
Det här är sergeant Johan Andersson vid ledningscentralen Minken. Jag har sett order om att evakuera till Saltholmsbasen och till fiskeväck på den här sidan. Det följer inte standardrutin. Har ni muntliga order från staben? Kom. Standardförfarande är omedelbar evakuering till fastlandet och vi har tappat all kontakt med staben. Det har också... Vi har fått information. Jag fick veta att något skulle hända för flera dagar sedan. Och nu kom det här angreppet och de konstiga evakueringsorderna. Jag behöver veta vad fan som försiggår, kom.
Our next little bit of insight comes from Sergeant Anderson inside of the naval military base there. And so Anderson was trying to contact the Saltoman naval base from Mingkun, which is actually the command bunker over in the southern coast that we'll be clearing out later on in this episode, actually. Again, he's another one of those soldiers that I think would be really awesome to see having survived this entire machine invasion. Or potentially we could hear about how he perished if there is ever a surviving military faction that gets introduced to the game. But now we're coming over here and we're clearing out our first radio tower, actually, the radio tower down in the archipelago, which is our first step into establishing some secure comms with the outside world, with that Russian contact that I have been talking about earlier, and also providing better comms across uTurn itself. One quick tick kill later, and we've liberated this radio station. So I think that with this, that's going to be more than enough experience for us to go off and start taking down the rest of the bunkers across the map. That's kind of my goal with this episode, hence why I made a bunker buster loadout in the beginning of the game, or the beginning of this episode, in order to make sure that that way we could go off to all of these bunkers and just rip our way right through them, so that that way I could have as many farming locations as I need, so that that way I could do the really crazy things that I'm planning on doing with this Let's Play. What we uncover from that radio broadcast is again the garbled message from the Russian contact Sergei. And so with that out of the way, I just need to do a little bit more farming here in order to actually have the supplies in order to go into the mainland. And you might be thinking, Tenebris, you've got like almost 2,400 bullets there. What the heck do you need more bullets for? But you can never have enough bullets here in Generation Zero. So I'm also gonna come through Moskar here in order to pick up all the weapons around this area, so that way I can recycle them into crafting materials, because you never know when you're going to need those crafting materials. Potentially in a future update we could see better tiers of schematics for clothing, or we could see the crafting materials get purposed for something else. But admittedly, the other thing too is I just wanted to come through Muscar anyway because it's one of my favorite areas in the map, especially ever since the Archipelago facelift that we got. This place just tells such a vivid story of the struggle of the Resistance, and it's kind of a sad story too because they were so established here and they still managed to get nuked off the face of the earth by machines. One long-ass journey later, and we are now at the military command bunker in the farmlands, the Sorkin bunker. So along this way here, I just took down some really easy machines, just some prototypes, to pick up the barcodes, and sadly, some of my footage got corrupted along the process here. So you don't get to see me overtake this bunker, but the rest of the bunker takedowns are all smooth when it comes to the recordings. It's just a bit of a growing pain, I guess, again, with using something like OBS, but in the future, corrupted files are not going to be an issue. It was just an encoding problem. Blah, 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 yada, yada. Who cares about YouTuber problems, right? So, coming through here, it was super easy to clear out this whole bunker, because it's just prototype machines in here. And now, coming up to this warboard, we get our first look into some more lore about the world here.
Sorken, kom in Sorken. Fan också. Lyssna, det här är kapten Lindqvist vid F23. Vi är helt och hållet vinklippta här. Bara en enda skvadron Vråken lyckades lyfta innan vi förlorade startbanan. Och vi har tappat kontakten med dem. Fienden är... Jag har aldrig sett någon liknande. Det är robotar. Hur i helvete känner vi inte till det här från USL? Vi har retirerat till vapenförrådet i bergrummet för att beväpna pansarvärn. Om vi inte kan återta startbanan kommer vi att sabotera den för att förhindra fienden och etablera brohuvud via luften. Elförsörjningen kommer och går och vi vet inte hur mycket tid vi har. Skicka förstärkning om möjligt, men vi kommer inte invänta den. Lindqvist, klart slut.
So we'll discuss what we just got from that warboard in just a second here as we clear out Mingkun. And I think that that's going to be the way I go about things throughout this video here. As we clear each successive bunker, we'll talk about what we learned from the last bunker. So getting my way into Mingkun here was rather easy, just fighting these doggos from the high ground here. Just picking them off with my Mauser. Super, super easy. But after this, I had a fight that wasn't so super easy. I actually had like this crazy 20-minute fight against a couple military tanks and a whole bunch of other machines. And so I think I'm going to use that footage actually in next month's update. When next month's update, or this month's update, comes out. I think that footage would be really awesome to use like that instead of just slapping it in this video here, because this is already going to be a pretty dang long video itself. So the last two messages that we get from the previous bunker from Sorkin are really, really interesting. So the first one, which again is one of those things that you don't realize until you get way later on into the game, after Alpine Unrest and all of that DLC, is that Elsa, one of the major players in Alpine Unrest, is actually from the single group of Vraken fighter pilots that managed to take off during this whole machine onslaught. So that's all going to be expanded upon a lot over the next episode, because just after this one, I'm planning on taking on all of Alpine Unrest in a single episode. So things are really, really popping off in this Let's Play here, and things are going a mile a minute, but I think that all of this is going to have some great payoff in the end, and I'm going to be super happy with the end result. And then the next message we get is a funky little message from a group of soldiers that were off at the Overby Air Base, where the Vraken pilots actually lift off from. And so basically this group gets pinned down by machines and runs into a back area in the Overby bunker in order to seek a little bit of refuge. and sadly, the end result is not super great for them, as you guys will find out in the coming episodes here. Now with power restored, let's go off to the warboard and get our next little dump of lore.
En telefonsvarare? Ja men fan, ni måste skämta. Okej, minns ni de sjuka grejerna jag berättade om på FOA 53? Nu har ni 11 döda forskare på ert samvete. Det skulle ha varit 12 om inte jag hade... Fan, lyssna nu. Ni måste stoppa evakueringen. Det här är inte det ni tror att det är och jag kan bevisa det. Skicka någon till Adavägen 2 i Kolleby, skynda er. Alltså kommer ni ens att lyssna på det här? Helvete!
Now we're off at Mardan to do our next bunker liberation, and this was actually a really crazy fight. It was my first time fighting against Phoenix Hunters, and it was pretty tough. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty tough. Phoenix Hunters are so fast, and their flechette shotguns have that knockdown effect that is just absolutely deadly, like so deadly against the early game and against underlevel players like where I'm at. So I had to play it really, really safe for this fight just to make sure that I wasn't dying needlessly. And you know, as they say, you don't need to be a hero always. So I just took my space and came back to the inside of Mardan here just to make sure that I had all of this coverage in my way, to make sure that, you know, I was doing nominal damage to the hunters and not exposing myself to their flechette guns too much. But it was all worth it in the end. The experience that I got from that fight was actually enough to get 3 experience points that I could then dump into my combat tree, so that way I could start getting some bullet damage resistance and also have quicker reload speeds and those kind of nice things along the way, better hip fire and stuff like that. So now we're coming into Mardan Bunker itself, and we're going to talk about the last little bit of lore we got, which was from Veronica. Veronica is actually an NPC that I really feel is going to come into play very, very soon. So she was a scientist that worked with Von Ulmer on the whole Phoenix program, and she actually lived in a city on the south coast over there, and after fleeing from the murders that actually happened for all the other scientists that were working on the Phoenix program, she was like the lone survivor, and what we'll find out is that her trail goes kind of cold here after this point, but we'll get a little bit of insight into what actually happens to Veronica later on when we actually take on that mission. I actually love liberating Mardan because it's such a cheeky little thing. You go down and you turn on the power, and then all of a sudden it turns off and they're like, oh, go investigate it, and it turns out that it's just a room filled with ticks. I think that it's just like a really cheeky little bunker liberation. But now that we've got all the power turned on, let's listen to this warboard for a next bit of lore.
Österviks polisstation. Det här är vakthavande befäl Viggo Pettersson på IGA-fabriken utanför Östervik. Varför svarar ni inte? Vi blir beskjutna. Vårt alarmsystem funkar inte och inte radion heller. Vi behöver assistans nu för helvete. Vi har miljontals liter farliga ämnen här ute och vinden ligger mot väst. En förlupen kula och Östervik kan bara ett jävla giftmål. Fattar ni? Morden, det här är Tore i Ludvig 3. Vi vet att ni inte svarar, men förhoppningsvis kanske ni fortfarande lyssnar. Vi har förföljt fienden in i skogen 1 kilometer nordväst Hjortkvarns sågverk. Fortfarande inga tecken. Stopp. Bakom oss. Skjut!
Det här är Emil Sandberg och här är SR4 Nyheter den 8 november. Som vi tidigare har rapporterat under morgonen så har det framkommit uppgifter om flera dödsfall i Östertörnsområdet under natten. Polisen är förtegen om vad som har hänt, men källor till SR bekräftar att över 10 personer har bragts om livet. Det är ännu oklart i vilken utsträckning, om någon, dessa dödsfall är sammanlänkade. Ett av offren påträffades i bostadsområdet Lillå i Östervik och SR4s reporter talade med en av grannarna som varit i kontakt med polisen, Fredrik Blom.
Det är fruktansvärt. Och du vet, jag varnar dem. Jag såg den här flygande metallsaken ovanför hennes hus igår kväll, ser du. Visst, jag sa till polisen, men de trodde inte på henne. Det var sant alltihop alltså. Morbror Kalle hade rätt. Det var de som gjorde det. De jävla utomjordingarna.
On our way over to the northern bunker to Hermelinen, it was actually a hell of a fight here. I wound up encountering my first Phoenix tank and had to take it down. So actually managed to make it through that fight pretty okay. But when we get to Hermelinen, even though we've got all of the bunker keycards, we find that the door will not open because it's broken for some reason. So we have to take the side entrance into Hermelinen itself. Now, the last bit of lore we get is really, really cool. So Emil is a guy that we're going to be talking about in the future, but we're actually going to be uncovering a couple old news broadcasts from him when we go through Alpine Unrest in the next episode. And then also on top of that, he's interviewing a guy named Frederick, who is actually the cousin of Uncle Cal. Now, for you guys that have been following along with all of the hype that's building up around the BBS posts from Uncle Cal, you'll know that Frederick is actually a pretty big player in whatever the heck is going on with Uncle Cal there. And so maybe it's aliens, maybe it's not, but we're going to be finding out pretty soon, that's for sure. And then on top of that, we also get a broadcast from a police member from Oostervik that is talking about the IGA gas facility. And we're actually going to be talking about gift gas itself in the future, because gift gas is a very interesting kind of piece of the puzzle when it comes to the machines here. Now, when I was going through Hermelinen here, it was just Tick City, but I had some kind of weird tick spawning, in which case their spawning was like a little bit delayed until after I got into the main hallway there, so I had to like seriously back off so that way I didn't have my first death in this playthrough be to a tick, because that would be friggin' terrible.
Hermelinen, det är löjtnant Axelsson vid FOA 5. Vi har lite problem. Någonting har låst ner våra underjordiska laboratoriefaciliteter. Vi kommer inte in och inga av våra passerkort eller manuella kontrollkoder funkar. Begär understöd från en ingenjörspluton så att vi kan öppna stötvågsporten. Ja, det påverkar avdelning 53. Vi märkte det först idag då polisen är här och vill undersöka anläggningen efter morden. Men staben håller dem borta för tillfället. Det finns en risk att forskningslaget blir ett måltavlor för fientliga operatörer och vi behöver få svar för egen del. Särskilt avseende de 2 personerna som fortfarande saknas. Och vi behöver komma in i labbet för att få alla svar.
14 här, vi är vid Hagaboda mosten. Upplever någon slags störning på radiobandet, växlar till NMT. Vi har lokaliserat vad vi tror är orsaken till störningen. Något är kopplat till kabelskåpet i skjulet, möjligen explosivt. Det här känns lite över vår lönenivå. Se om vi kan få in en minröjare från försvaret eller något. Vi har låst skjulet och säkrar området tills vidare. Kom.
The Skvarden bunker codes were actually really easy to obtain this time around. I just jogged off to Normira Artillery and decided to loot them off a couple already downed machines. That way I could conserve my ammo for this bunker and then the last one after it. So there's 2 runners over here, and if you guys ever run into issues with enemies not rendering or loot boxes not rendering, just give a quick turnaround, a quick 180 or 360, and a lot of times they'll wind up popping back in. Now, over at Skvarden, it was a little bit different of an entry this time. Instead of taking on the bunker head-on, I decided to come down the kind of side entrance and come through this winding tunnel. Mostly just for my own variation here, because the last time I took on Skvarden, it was just head-on blitzkrieg. But this time I thought it would be fun to take a little bit more stealthy of an entry approach to this place. Now, the pipes down here actually gave me a little bit of a hard time, because they have some kind of wonky hitboxes that stick out a little bit further than the pipe itself. So I had to step way out into the open to take down that runner there. But after that, it was all just your typical bunker run stuff, using this pretty excellent bunker loadout of the AI-76, which is really good at close range combat, and then using the semi-auto shotgun in case if I needed to take on anything with a little bit bigger of a punch. Now, there wasn't too much to really talk about from our last bunker in terms of lore. It's mostly just stuff that we're going to be uncovering as we go along, but basically FOA 5 and 53 were completely locked down by reasons unknown to the military out there. We'll later on find out that it was all locked down by Von Olver himself, but that's stuff that we'll talk about once we get to that point. And then also there was the Hagaboda police, and basically they ran into a tick and they thought it was a bomb, but it wasn't a bomb this time. So since we aren't going to be talking about lore too much, actually I figured I'd shoot out one of those ideas that I had talked about in episode 1, where it's like an idea that I haven't fully formulated, but I thought was just kind of a unique thought that would be kind of fun to talk about. So basically, the idea is a machine designed entirely for bunkers. This machine would only spawn inside of bunkers, and potentially then you would only ever encounter it as you're going through bunkers the first time, or if we ever find repeatable bunkers to go through in the future of Generation Zero. But the idea itself is rather simple, so hear me out here. Essentially, the idea behind this machine would be a machine designed entirely for close quarters combat. So with the experimental shotgun, if you put slug rounds into the experimental shotgun, it's a very short range shot, but it has a lot of stagger capability against machines. So the idea is to give a machine a shotgun that essentially does the exact same thing. It would just be a very close range slug round that would knock your character down pretty much 9 times out of 10. And then outside of that, maybe give it a Hunter Viper Sword or something like that. Now this would basically be designed like a Hunter or something close to it.
Hermelinen, det här är Olof Tore 2. Vi har fortfarande en trasig bil vid Östertörnsbron och helt stillastående kö. Vi uppmanar folk att återvända till sina evakueringsplatser. Kom. Hermelinen, vi har inkommande eld, riktning syd, bekräfta visuellt. Nu det. Helvete. Vad i helvete? Blomberg! Position höger! Ladda pansarskott! Eld! Hermelinen, vi tar ställning i skogen nära brons sydända. Vi har inkommande eld. Vi har slut.
Uppfattat skvaden. Fientlig eldgivning vid östra porten. Besvarar. Observera, vår beredskap är undermålig. Huvuddelen av bataljonen har ännu inte rapporterat in. Fienden siktar även i södra skjutfältet nu. Okänd angripare, det ser ut som någon form av obemannade stridsmaskiner. De har nått radiomasten. Vi kan inte hålla dem tillbaka.
So for getting the key codes to the uTurn bunker here, I was actually really fortunate and managed to have a relay beacon spawn over here. So all I had to do was take down the prototype runners that were hanging out around the beacon, and there you go, bada bing, bada boom, I wound up getting my hands on the 3 bunker key codes. Super, super easy. Now, this is something that I've been thinking about as I've been playing through the game here. I think it would be kind of cool to see relay beacons defended by something other than just prototype machines. I'm pretty sure that off at Alpine Unrest, a lot of the beacons are defended by something other than prototypes. So it would be really cool to see that apply to the mainland as well. Now, in terms of lore that we got from the last bunker, there isn't too much to talk about because, again, it's pretty skim on details, and it's not anything so far that seems like it might be coming in the future. But in respects to the old guard, I think it would be really cool to see these guys come into play at some point in time. Maybe, again, if there ever is a military faction introduced into the game, like I had been talking about at the beginning of the video, maybe it would be cool to see the old guard having teamed up with like the new military and a kind of joining of forces, and that's how they managed to survive. But outside of that, coming through uTurn is just kind of run-of-the-mill stuff. There's just a couple Phoenix runners to take out. Over there with the military runner, though, I specifically aim for the body so that way I don't accidentally explode its fuel cell and blow up the entire lower floor, because that can be a really easy mistake to make in that room specifically.
Ja, det var 18 här vid utanför Klinte, vid järnvägstunneln vid Muskuddens örlogsbas. Det ser ut som en tågvagn har spårat ur rakt ovanför vägen. En hel container blockerar vägen, den måste ha kommit från Muskudden. Det är något som rör sig där framme, jag och Sandberg tar en titt. Vi får hoppas att det inte är som på film, där det sista ni hör är någon som... Vad i helvete!
Now, from uTurn, we don't get too much lore, but that police officer mentioned Muskudden, and that's actually going to be a place that we come to rather early on here, at some point very soon, because it's such a great looting location. Now we have 2 more skill points that we can use, so we're going to dump them both into health amount, so that way we could be just as tanky as possible right now. So, there we go. An absolutely mega episode for episode 2 here. Clearing out all of the bunkers across the map. This took me the better part of my Sunday, so hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this. I think that this setup is going to be so useful in the future, just giving me the opportunity to loot as I need to. But we're going to wrap up the episode here. In the next episode, we're going off to Alpine Unrest, and it is my goal to complete all of Alpine Unrest in 1 episode. So you guys can look forward to that, and hopefully you guys have been enjoying this Let's Play here as much as I've enjoyed creating it. I've been having an absolute blast playing through the game again, and also playing through it in a completely different way to the way I played when I first started Generation Zero. But thank you so much for watching. You guys have been Tenebris, I've been awesome, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Until then, peace.